The 1999 championship begins down under on this temporary circuit at Albert Park in Melbourne. The long months of winter testing are over, and now it's finally time for the competition to begin. The first encounter always sorts out the real contenders for the season. This fast, picturesque track threads its way around a lake, but it nevertheless conceals many surprises. You'll have to brake hard and watch out for deceptive bends and the bumpy surface, so you'd be wise to set the car up for maximum downforce and soft suspension. Negotiate the first turn in third gear at 80 miles per hour. The bumpiest section of the circuit takes you to a right-left S-bend. First of all, take the sport centre turn in second. Then, straight into the hellish turn in third at 85 miles per hour. After Whiteford, accelerate up to 175 miles per hour down the short straight and take the Albert Park turn at 70 miles per hour. Use full throttle as you enter the Lakeside Drive turn. Then change down to second to take the Clark chicane. As is common with every temporary circuit, the track is fairly dirty, especially at the start of the weekend, before a fine layer of fresh rubber has been laid out. You are now approaching two very fast turns, 11 and 12. All the drivers need to be in prime physical condition for this opening race, especially as the temperatures can soar during the late Australian summer. You're now at the far end of the lake and need to be in third gear to take this 90-degree right turn. This track is certainly memorable for its right-handers. After turns 15 and 16, you accelerate down the straight towards the pit. There, you've now had your briefing for the Australian Grand Prix. May the best man win! The second stage of the 1999 World Championship takes us to Interlagos on the outskirts of Sao Paulo. This is where the Brazilian Grand Prix will be contested, as it has been on every occasion in the past. With the heat, its wide corners and bumpy surface, the Jose Carlos pace track is one of the most taxing for both man and machine. There are, nevertheless, plenty of overtaking opportunities, particularly at this first corner, which drops steeply and needs to be taken in second. On exit, change up a gear for the approach to the Curva da Senna. With your foot hard on the throttle, you then enter the Curva da Sol. Along the Reta Oposta, you can get up to 185 miles per hour. This leads into the Descida de Lago, taken in fourth. It's a particularly bumpy section. Next up is another left-hander, also taken in fourth. You're now going to fly through a number of twists, starting with the Ferradura or Horseshoe, taken in fourth. This is followed by the Laranja, where you have to change right down to first gear, dropping down to around 45 miles per hour. As you exit the Pinarino, the track opens up and you can really put your foot down. You come to another hairpin, Cotovelo, the elbow, which you can take in first or second. You are now approaching Mergulo, literally the dive. Take it almost at full throttle. And finally, Yuncao. The drive uphill towards the pits provides an opportunity for a real show of skill. It requires tip-top physical condition and faultless road holding. At last, you've now completed a lap. So just 74 more to go then. It's a grueling race, the Brazilian Grand Prix, particularly as the Interlagos circuit is the only track apart from Imola to run anti-clockwise. The significance of this is that the driver's neck muscles are far more accustomed to lateral forces pulling them to the left, so it's no wonder they find the circuit especially tiring. The San Marino Grand Prix marks the start of the European season. It's staged at the Enzo and Dino Ferrari Autodrome in Imola, the home of the Ferrari team. This is a rather selective and varied circuit running anti-clockwise. It's worth noting that Imola is not actually located in San Marino, but in Italy, just a short distance away from the small republic. Tamburello is the first corner. It was converted into a chicane a few years ago. Take it in third. Another new chicane, Villeneuve, leads into Tosa, also taken in third. Tosa is indicative of the rest of the circuit in that it requires a lot of heavy braking. When setting up, therefore, you should sacrifice some grip in favour of better balance and speed of response. Accelerate to 180 miles per hour down this straight. You're now approaching Piratella, a double corner which begins the descent. This is followed by Acqua Minerale, quite a nasty chicane because of its bumpy surface. Change down to third in Variante Alta, then you exit onto a straight which drops away with a slight curve. At this point, you can reach speeds of up to 185 miles an hour. You are now at Rivazza, a turn which swings round a hill on which 40,000 excited fans are gathered. The Tifosi. You can take each section of this turn at 75 miles per hour. Make your way back to the pit via the Variante Bassa. One lap, 3.041 miles. To qualify at Imola, you'll have to fly along at an average speed of around 125 miles per hour. Good luck! Welcome to the Principality of Monaco, home to the most prestigious Grand Prix of them all, the one all the drivers dream of winning. It's a circuit like no other, and not just because it's the slowest and shortest of the season. The race takes place in the steep streets of Monaco, which carry regular traffic the rest of the year. But before the engines start to roar, let's take a look round the route. Overtaking is such a risky business at Monaco that it's reckoned that the driver who's in the lead by the steps at Saint-Devote at the end of the first straight, already has an excellent chance of winning. In the Monte du Beau Rivage, the surface is bumpy, as is often the case with street tracks, but you should quickly reach 160 miles an hour. You crest down the hill and speed down to Virage de Massenet and Virage du Casino. In fact, it's only a stone's throw from the agony of the track to the agony of the gambling table. Indeed, this Grand Prix is sometimes nicknamed the Casino, given the important role that luck plays in its outcome. Downhill now, after a tight bend at the Mirabeau Hotel and another bumpy ride. You're now entering the hairpin at the Monte Carlo Grand Hotel, a real bottleneck. The maximum speed through this bend is 25 miles an hour, but during the early laps, the pack takes it at a crawl. The Virage du Portier marks the end of the downhill section and is taken in second. Put your foot right down as you approach the Louis II tunnel. As you re-emerge into the sunlight, you should be going at about 175 miles an hour. As you fly past the Palais de Congrès, you come to the Nouvelle Chicane. It's a tight and narrow one, so you'll need to drop down to 35 miles an hour. As you can imagine, those yachts in the harbour with an unrestricted view of the track cost a small fortune to hire out. And now for Tabac, where you need third gear and a touch of brake. This is followed by the swimming pool complex S-bend. You'll find the second part is slower than the first. And finally, you come to Virage Rascaille, which you take in second at 30 miles an hour. And thus we finish our tour under the blue skies of the Côte d'Azur. The Circuit de Catalunya is located some 12 miles from Barcelona. It has a number of fantastic stretches where you can show off your talent to the full, assisted by the very smooth track surface. When not being used as a venue for the Spanish Grand Prix, it's also used for carrying out private test drives. You accelerate at top speed down to the first strategic point in the race, Elf. An excellent corner for overtaking if you've got the stomach for late braking. Then you approach the 180-degree Renault curve, climbing upwards in fourth gear. You're pushed to find the right line here as you can't see the exit. This is then followed by Repsol, a wide but deceptively slow 180-degree bend to be taken in third. For the tight Seat hairpin, you need a firm grip on the steering wheel and the perfect chassis setting. This is another ideal spot for overtaking. You are now entering worst, best taken in a controlled skid. Then it's on to Kamsa, a fast bend which leads down to the Nissan Straight. After a brief burst of acceleration, you now approach a series of bends. The first of these is La Queza, which should be negotiated in second after some furious braking. Drivers pull 3.8 G here. Then it's into Bank Sabadell, another 180-degree bend. Enter in third, but drop another gear before turning. Change back up to fifth and stay there for the last two bends. And finally, another burst of acceleration should catapult you down the slight incline of the longest straight in the championship. There's the line, marking the end of the circuit and the end of our tour. Montreal is the only venue in North America this year for Formula One. The Canadian Grand Prix is staged from the island of Notre Dame, situated right in the middle of the Lawrence River. There are only 2 casinos in the world surrounded by a Formula One circuit. One is in Monaco, the other is here, hemmed in by this temporary circuit named after Gilles Villeneuve. The first challenge you face is the lack of downforce at the left-right hairpin, Virage Senna. The race through this first bend is very, very intense. Don't let the other drivers intimidate you or you'll never get through to the front. You are now approaching a tree-lined, windy section of the course where a whole series of blind bends seem likely to have a few nasty surprises in store. To cope with the heavy braking and accelerating demanded by this course, teams strive to minimize car weight. That's why the fuel tanks are filled to the minimum, despite the risk that a driver might run out. You can touch 200 miles an hour along this stretch. After the Pont de la Concorde, you negotiate turns 8 and 9 in third. The island of Notre Dame was created in the 60s using rubble from the construction of Montreal's subway network. Right, you're now approaching the hairpin, Virage du Casino, the scene of many epic battles. Despite the low speed, this is often the point where the race is won or lost. You return towards the pits against the backdrop of an international rowing basin. Take the last chicane in second at 50 miles an hour. There, you've completed the lap. Now, do it for real. Nevers-Manicourt, where the French Grand Prix has been contested since 1991. It's not renowned as a very fast track, but it does offer a wide range of corners. It's built over a small area so that the layout seems to turn back in on itself. The emphasis has been placed more on driver safety and the comfort of fans. Spectators here enjoy a perfect view of the whole course. Go right up to fifth as you enter the first bend, Grand Tour. This is followed by the Estoril bend, located in a dip. Increase the acceleration again, quickly and smoothly, ensuring that you hold the car's line as tightly as possible. At the end of the straight, you enter the main trouble spot at Manicourt, the Adelaide hairpin. This is probably the best place for overtaking. You brake hard for 120 yards and drop down to first. The track surface at Manicourt is supposed to be the smoothest in Formula One. Now, the 180 degrees. There aren't many visual clues along this section. Drivers have to know the layout inside and out. You can take the Imola S-bend at 135 miles an hour, but you'll need to brake heavily for the Chateau d'Eau, which follows straight after. The excellent quality of the surface here allows very stiff suspension. The chicane leads into the light sea hairpin, which is followed by the straight, leading to the pit. And finally, you reach the start-finish line. Now see if you can cross that line first. Welcome to Silverstone, the heart of motor racing, where Formula One was born on the 13th of May 1950. If I tell you the site was used as an airfield by the Royal Air Force during World War II, then it should come as no surprise that the track is completely flat. As for the car setup, you should opt for medium settings. The first corner, Copse, is incredibly fast. Although it's blind, you can take it in fifth without braking. Then you fly through a series of bends. Take Maggots in fifth, then drop a gear when entering Beckett. So long as your nerve holds, you shouldn't have to touch the brake. Get up to 185 miles an hour in the Hangar Straight. You then approach Stowe Corner, a good place to overtake. Club is the first corner where you need to change down to second. Cars have an annoying tendency to slide here. You speed along to Abbey, which has recently been reworked as a chicane. Choose between second and third gears. Braking for bridge here, you'll experience an agonizing 3.8G deceleration. A chance to get your breath back now as you approach Silverstone's slowest section. It's known as the Grandstand. The Northamptonshire countryside around the track stretches as far as the eye can see. You need to change to second gear to take Luffield, a rather slow corner that runs through 180 degrees. Finally, you're crossing the finish line of the British Grand Prix. Now you know what you've got to do, so be prepared. Welcome to Spielberg. In 1997, the Österreich ring was redesigned and became this, the A1 ring. This new track begins with the Castrol curve. You can enter at 45 miles an hour, but ease off as you exit as it's notoriously slippery. The cars touch nearly 185 miles an hour down this straight. The Remus curve is taken in first. You come into it blind, so it takes experience to find the right line. Changing from fifth to sixth on this downhill stretch, you reach a top speed of around 180 miles an hour. This circuit offers quite a few overtaking opportunities. There's a good one here as you enter the right-hand Gosser curve in second. Next up is the left-hand Niki Lauda curve. Go into fourth as you make the turn. The Gerhard Berger curve is almost identical to the Niki Lauda. At this point, your speed should be about 175 miles an hour. The Jochen Rindt curve here produces the greatest thrills on the track. A final right-hander before you reach the pits. The track is bumpy along this stretch. Right, we're now at the end of the course. So good luck for the Grand Prix. Welcome to Hockenheim, where the vast stadium has capacity for 100,000 spectators. It was inaugurated back in 1939, though the German Grand Prix didn't come here until 1970. Negotiate the first corner, the Nord curve in fourth. At this junction, you leave the Motordrome and enter the fast section of the circuit deep in the forest. Down this straight, you can touch 210 miles an hour, the season's top speed. This track has a reputation for being an engine breaker, as the cars are flat out for a lot of the race. You're now approaching the Jim Clark curve, one of the key places offering good overtaking opportunities. Because of the long straights, the cars are set up so that aerodynamic downforces are at a minimum. Unlike today, the original track had no chicane. The second chicane on the circuit entering the Ost curve is the tightest. You have to take it in second. The Hockenheim track is particularly narrow, so overtaking can be difficult. You're now approaching the Senna chicane. As with the others, you should drop down to second. You sweep back into the stadium for the slowest section of the Hockenheim track. This is followed by the Adjit curve, a fast right-hander to be taken in fourth. This leads into the Sachs curve. The lack of downforce can be a problem here. There, that's the course completed. 4.24 miles. Among all the circuits in this year's calendar, only Spa is slightly longer. The Hungarian Grand Prix has been a regular fixture on the calendar since 1986. The Hungaroring track sees little use other than this annual event. Its surface is covered in sand and dust, which can be dangerous if you drive offline. There are very few overtaking opportunities on this track, so a well-adjusted car and sound pit strategies are of paramount importance. The first 180-degree bend with its outward camber is particularly tricky. You have to brake going downhill. Great strain is put on the tyres here, partly because of the high temperatures at this time of year, and partly because of the track's abrasive surface and tortuous nature. In the straight, you can get up to 170 miles an hour. Change down to fourth as you approach the next corner. Then climb up to the next, dropping a gear as you enter it. This right-left corner is on the highest section of the Hungaroring. Take it in second gear and exit in fourth. This is followed by turn 8, taken at 75 to 80 miles per hour at its apex. Take this corner in third. Then put your foot down and take this gentle curve flat out. Because of the twisting layout, the emphasis here is very much on braking, engine performance and side grip. Maximum downforce is recommended. This is a formidable corner with a high bank. The last turn is tricky. The car oversteers on entry and then understeers on exit. The 2.465-mile course is now complete. As this track is not very long, you can expect a great deal of congestion during the race. Victory may depend on overtaking the stragglers, so keep your cool and have a great Grand Prix. Nicknamed the Toboggan, Spa-Francorchamps is renowned for being the circuit that separates the men from the boys. The drivers face a series of breathtaking ups and downs and hair-raising corners, and if the past years are anything to go by, the prospect of adverse weather conditions too. The first challenge you face is La Source Hairpin, where speeds drop to about 35 miles an hour. There are many overtaking possibilities here, as there are in general along the whole circuit. Then you come to Spa's hairiest point, the big drop down to Eau Rouge, reaching 185 miles an hour in the dip. You climb back uphill at around 170 to 175 miles an hour. You can reach speeds of 195 miles an hour along the Kemmel Straight. At this point, you leave the Route Nationale and cut across the Ardennes countryside. Previously, this circuit only ran on public roads. It was 8.7 miles long in those days, around twice the size it is now. You quickly negotiate Malmedy. You're now approaching Rivage, a 180-degree bend that drops downhill. Take it in second. The large Pouhon double bend here. You take it at between 140 and 150 miles an hour. You need to hold an absolutely straight line to maintain your momentum. Drop down to third for the right-left chicane at Farn. Exiting the Stavelot bend, you're now at the Nationale. This corner at Blanchimont is taken flat out during qualification. It's the only level stretch on the toboggan. We are now coming to bus stop chicane. you carry straight on here for the pits. That's it. You've completed the lap. Good luck. Welcome to the National Autodrome at Monza, the High Temple of Speed. It holds the average lap speed record in qualifying of 155 miles an hour. Monza, like every other fast track, is very demanding on the engine. You should have the lowest wing settings for minimum drag. Shortly after passing the 100-meter sign, you slam on the brakes and twist through the double chicane, Variante Goodyear, riding the bumps as you go. Accelerate into the Curva Grande and catapult out of it at 195 miles an hour. You're then practically stopped in your tracks by the Variante della Roggia, a chicane you'll have to negotiate at 60 miles an hour or less. This leads into the Curva di Lesmo, a double corner where you take each section at over 95 miles an hour. Turning can be difficult because of the lack of downforce, so you should opt for a stiff front suspension. You can rocket through the Curva del Seraglio here. You should be able to accelerate up to 200 miles an hour before you have to brake next. The Variante Ascari is fairly wide, so it's pointless changing down any lower than third. At the end of the Rettifilo Centro, you come to the Parabolica, the type of bend that clearly demonstrates whether you are or not one of the sport's greats. It's a test of pure, breathtaking high speed. Finally, you tear down the Rettifilo Straight at over 205 miles an hour. That's it, 3.604 miles. That was the Autodrome. But enough talk, and on to the Grand Prix. Welcome to the Nürburgring, host of this year's European Grand Prix. The 17-mile track that used to occupy this site has a long history in the annals of motor racing. The present track is far more compact and dates from just 1984. Your first test is the Castrol S-Band, which you enter at 185 miles an hour and exit at 80. Then quickly up to 170 miles an hour on this short straight. Next up is the forward curve with its inward camber to catch out unwary novices. Be careful not to lock your wheel. We're now approaching the Dunlop curve, a 190-degree hairpin you have to enter in second. On exit, you explode towards the shell left-right turn, taken at 155 to 160 miles an hour. There's a real risk of understeer at every corner on the Nürburgring. After the RTL curve, you approach one of the trickiest places on the track, the bit curve. Take this at around 105 miles an hour. The acceleration should be barely affected by the gentle curve of the ITT Bogan. The Vidal S-bend. You'll notice the car has a tendency to run onto the grass. Now, it's just a treacherous Coca-Cola curve between you and the grid. Drivers have to keep a tight grip on the steering wheel here. Foot to the floor now as you sweep down this last long straight. You've now completed the track, all 2.831 miles, so bring on the race. The 17th of October 1999 marks an historic date for the drivers here. If they achieve victory on the Sepang F1 circuit, they'll be the first ever winner of the Malaysian Grand Prix. The pre-race briefing will undoubtedly have a strong influence on determining who'll come first on this brand new track. The first challenge is a right-hand hairpin, which you're expected to take in second at 55 miles an hour. Don't take it too tightly. As the track descends, be careful not to let your wheel spin when taking the second turn. Negotiate this bend in fourth at 125 miles an hour. Turn 4, taken in second, climbs up towards the end. The following turn is wide and sweeping. You should take it flat out. Keep in the middle of the track so that you can enter turn 6 comfortably, decelerating to 95 miles an hour in third. Take turn 7 in third and take your foot off the brake very early. Get up to 145 miles an hour in the short straight. Then climb up to turn 9. The track narrows at the end here. Take this bend tightly in third at 95 miles an hour. As you attack this 90-degree bend, keep in third and slow down to around 75 miles an hour. It descends slightly, so watch out for understeer. Take turn 12 at around 105 miles an hour. You'll notice a tendency to oversteer in turn 14. Change down to second and slow down to about 70 miles an hour. Then rocket down this completely flat straight at 195 miles an hour. The broad section of this turn surrounds the Canopy Tower, a real architectural gem. At last, you're on the pit straight, 1,015 yards long and completely flat. And finally, you complete the 3.444-mile circuit, crossing the line at 195 miles an hour. Of course, the provisional speeds given are all relative. The real test will be on the track on the day, so you'll just have to take your chances along with all the other drivers. The final race of the season takes us to Suzuka, the home of Japanese Formula One. This is the culmination of a year's effort for drivers and crews alike, and of course everyone wants to finish the season in style. The fans here think nothing of queuing the night before the Grand Prix to cheer on these modern-day samurais. The pit straight climbs uphill. The first right-hander is very tough to negotiate and seems to carry on forever. You're hit immediately by 3.6G as you enter the S-curve. If you can still think straight, try to ride the bumps and keep it in fourth. Attack the Dunlop curve at 175 miles an hour, where there's plenty of understeer. This corner is blind as you go uphill, but keep the foot on the gas all the same. The car swings as you descend, and ahead of you lies the Degner curve, an extremely fast corner. Watch out on the second part of the bend, it's slower than it seems. This hairpin is one of the few places on the circuit where you have to drop down to second gear. You can get back up to sixth on this long bend, accelerating up to 175 miles an hour. This is followed by the looping spoon curve. Make sure you're in the right gear before braking and try to control the understeer in the second half. Fly down the straight. The cars can reach 195 miles an hour here. Suzuka is the only track this season with a figure-of-8 configuration. Zigzag through the casino chicane in second. Finally, you're back at the start-finish line. Just a final word about car settings. The teams aim for high speed, low downforce in response to all these straights. And that ends our overview of the Suzuka racing course. This is it then, the final race, the very best of luck.